Welcome to today's Audit Committee. This is not a public meeting, but a meeting the public can attend. I'm Councillor Glenn Bluff, Vice Chair of the Audit Committee, chairing the meeting today. Before we commence, I'd like to outline the domestic arrangements for the meeting. We are not expecting a fire practice. If the alarm sounds, please leave the chamber, then turn right and proceed down the stairwell and through the emergency exit on the ground floor. The assembly point is in the public square in front of CAST, just over there, just behind the fountain. Anyone with mobility issues should wait in the refuge area near the lift and use the intercom to call for assistance. This meeting will be recorded and published on the Council's website. By entering the Council chamber, you are accepting that you will be recorded and your images will be retained and broadcast by the Council. If anyone intends to record today's meeting, please ensure that this does not disturb the conduct of the meeting, and please ensure that you have your mobile phones set to silent, as I've just done, and I will now commence the meeting. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have apologies from the Chair, Councillor Austin White. Are there any others? No? Okay, thank you. Item 2, exclusion of the public and press. There are no items on the agenda where the public and press are to be excluded. Is that agreed? Thank you. Okay, item 3. Are there any declarations of interest? If yes, please complete the declarations form and forward it to Governance Services. Item 4. Minutes of the Audit Committee held on 13th of February 2025. I trust everybody's read the minutes. Can the minutes be moved as a true and accurate record?
Move them, Chair.
And second? Thank you, Iris. Excellent. And then item 5, Audit Committee Action Log. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to the members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing to add to the report. There's no actions on the action log.
Excellent. Any questions from the committee? No. Iris? Excellent. Thank you, Peter. So I'll now read out the recommendation for this. The committee is asked to note the progress made against the actions agreed at the previous committee meeting. Is that moved? And seconded? Thank you. John? All agreed. Thank you. Okay, and then item 6, the annual report of the monitoring officer. As all members have read the reports, can I ask the monitoring officer, Scott Focus, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to think the report's relatively well detailed and provides you with the information you need. Just to highlight one or 2 points, we've had 5 complaints against borough councillors during this past year, which is a slight increase on 3 the previous year, but taken as an average, appears to be unremarkable across the last 3 years. It appears to be relatively level, and in terms of parish and town councillors, there have been 10 complaints against 7 from the previous year, but again taken as an average across the past 3 years. Complaint activity remains relatively level. I've detailed the complaints within the appendix in an anonymised fashion, and you will see that although there were a number of complaints there, many were unfounded. This year was remarkable in the sense that we had 1 complaint which went all the way to hearing and a sanction applied by a subcommittee of this audit committee, which I know some of you were involved in. So again, that's detailed within the report. It is only fair that I make my annual statement, which is that including the elected mayor, there are 56 ward councillors and 10 complaints, 5 complaints across that number. I think is a fair number, and behaviour is generally very, very good. And 10 complaints against around about 350 councillors serving 37 parish and town councils across Doncaster, again, shows that the vast majority of people are giving their time voluntarily and are complying with the requirements of the Nolan Code. I have said within the report that it is, I think, fair to thank all of those people who have served for the past 4 years in ward and town and parish councils across this town, because we are about to go into all our elections, as you'll all be well aware, for basically their compliance with the code and the requirements and the time they've given. The fact that I don't have to have a great deal to do with them is a good thing. And across the, again, 37 town and parish councils, all but 2 look like they will finally sign up to the LGA's modern code. We'll continue to work with the others that we haven't had a response from. Whistleblows have increased slightly. Well, they've increased from 2 to 7. It's hard to say whether or not that is problematical, because we've had this debate on an annual basis. Are no whistleblowers good, or are they bad? Are they a bad thing because no one knows about your policy? It's healthy that you do get some people availing themselves of it. Again, the details are contained within the report, and some of the complaints were unsubstantiated following some significant investigations. And again, there's a nil money laundering return for the previous year. So I hope that there's sufficient detail in there for you, councillors. Obviously happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks very much, Scott. Any questions?
More of a comment really than anything else. I welcome the report, by the way. We've been on this before, I believe, and I believe there were some discussions in Parliament about sanctions and reviewing the sanctions. I particularly refer to the parish and town councils. I'm not having a go at them, don't get me wrong, but sometimes when I've sat on 2 now, since I've been on audit committee, and I must be careful with my words, I think. But basically, it's that there's very little that as an audit committee or subcommittee that we can actually do in terms of sanctions. And we've discussed this before, and I just wondered if there'd been any sort of review in Parliament about it.
Yeah, I mean, the new government is making the same noises that have been made before about a review of the standards code and a reversion to the previous position pre-2011, whereby some more stringent sanctions were available, such as dismissal as a councillor or suspension from being a councillor, and suspension would mean allowances wouldn't be paid for that period of suspension. It's been a long time in the offing. We'll see where it gets to. I can't imagine it's uppermost of most governments' minds, if I'm perfectly honest. It will need parliamentary time. One of the reasons it was taken away previously, well, there were 2 reasons it was taken away previously. Firstly, the concept that actually the electorate should decide whether or not someone was a worthy councillor, not officers or panels. And the other point was it became quite an expensive and time-consuming process, with some processes in other councils being reported costing tens and tens of thousands of pounds, taking a long, long time. And as you can imagine, if you're able to suspend someone from paid councillor work, perhaps even senior councillors, there's a financial element to that, and people start getting lawyers and it gets more and more expensive. And if you bring in more stringent sanctions, you also probably, and this is what's been talked about at the moment, have to bring in an appeal process, which then takes it into another arena as well. So you're moving it away from a local determination, which is what you've got solely at the moment, towards an appeal panel, perhaps held somewhere else by people who have no connection locally. So it is complicated. I suspect within the next 4 years we may see something, but time will tell. But we are where we are at the moment.
Thank you, Scott. Any other questions? No. Scott, I'd like to join in thanking all the councillors in parishes and towns across our city who give up their time for free, and also to the parish clerks as well, who, by and large, by the number of complaints that we haven't had, do a good job as well in keeping their councillors on the straight and narrow. And also, I think that the entire committee here would like to thank you for your professionalism and your patience with some of these complaints. I know it's not an easy job, and it's a bit of a thankless job, I think. But I think that's reflected in the fact that we've only had just the one subcommittee here in this time round. And prior to that, there wasn't another one except for in 2019. So I think that is a testament to your good work. So thank you very much, Scott. So I'm very comfortable in overall terms with the conduct of the borough, the parish councillors and the town councillors. And I'm satisfied with the whistleblowing, although you did say it had increased. So I'm just going to move on to reading out the recommendation. So the committee is asked to note the Monitoring Officer's annual report on complaint handling activity for the period 1st of April to the 31st of March 2025, to note the whistleblowing return for 2024-2025, and to note the nil money laundering reports for the same period, 2024 to 25. Is that moved? And seconded? All agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Okay, item number 7, the breaches and waivers to the council's procurement rules, and we have Holly again for us. So, as all members of the report, can I ask Holly Wilson, Head of Procurement, if she wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention, or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Holly.
Thank you, Chair. Just to bring to your attention the key elements of the report. So this report covers the 6-month period between the 1st of September 2024 up to the 28th of February 25. There was a decrease in the amount of waivers approved for that period to 13 from 15. In the last report, which was brought to the committee in November, there was 0 breaches reported. For this period, there has been 1 breach reported, which is detailed in the appendix. The other key figure to bring to the committee's attention is that we launched the e-learning procurement and CPR training in August 2024. And at the writing of this report, 85% of staff have completed this training across the council. That has actually gone up subsequently. I did get the refresh figure because obviously we have to put the reports in a bit earlier than to obviously make sure that you get it. It's now gone up to 88% completed, with 12% of officers not completing it. But just to note, that does include staff who may be on long-term absence due to sickness, maternity, paternity, suspension and so on. So those figures do include those staff. And also, actually, a key thing for procurement professionals across the land is the Procurement Act 2023 did go live on the 25th of February 2025. So that is now, we're rolling with it, and we're operating procurement procedures in line with that legislation, which we're subject to. And that's probably it. So open to questions.
Thank you, Holly. Any questions?
I have Austin questions. Don't worry, that it's not so long as usual. Are you able to provide any further information regarding the one breach that might be appropriate to provide any update? I've got 4 questions, so do you want to?
Yeah, so the breach is with regards to a software system. The contract has been, we've put the controls in place to make sure that the contract is not out of contract, because it's a business critical software solution used in children's services, so they need that. So we've ensured that they've put in place a 12-month contract to cover us while the re-procurement is underway. The department, when approached about this contract, had been approached by corporate resources officers on numerous occasions, and unfortunately, due to departmental changes and officer changes with regards to roles and responsibilities, they did not act on within the timescales that they needed to. Subsequently, they did put through a CPR waiver report for us to approve. We rejected that because it did not meet the rationale required, and hence it's now become a breach and come to audit committee. I spoke to my assistant category manager yesterday to make sure she's working with the service area now and that we've got the procurement underway, and I've been assured that that is now happening. So within the, after 12 months, it will be properly procured in line with the CPRs.
If I may continue, please. The second question you've covered in your explanation. Can you provide some explanation for the low training completion rate in CYPF? I know you've upped it, and you explained about the long term.
Yeah, so CYPF were, as per the table, the worst performing directorate with regards to completing the mandatory training. Subsequently, from the figures I got yesterday, they have gone from 68% to 79% now. So that is a real improvement. They are a very large directorate with dispersed officers, and a lot of their people managers who were part of the mandatory list aren't involved or heavily involved in procurement. So there may be, I think there was a bit of a, we don't see this as part of our role, but regardless, it's mandatory training, and that's been fully communicated now. The directors put that message out to her directorate, hence the improvement in the statistics. So hopefully that should give some assurance to committee.
The final question is that, are you satisfied with our current arrangements, and are there any hotspots or areas for development that the Audit Committee should be aware of?
Yeah, I'm currently satisfied with the arrangements that we have in place and the compliance levels. There are always ongoing investigations into contract spend through our spend analysis system. And if there is anything, obviously I would bring it to committee's attention, but I am satisfied. We've obviously put in place the new contract procedure rules. Those have been embedded throughout the organisation, and things seem to be going well.
Thank you, Erin. Holly, just a question on me about, you mentioned about monitoring spend. Obviously we have the procedure rules, we have these limits that we get to before we go out to tender, those kind of things. But what happens regarding aggregated purchases through purchase cards? And I do know that Peter's doing a review on this later this year, but I wonder if you could just explain to the committee how we aggregate spend. And in particular, I know the breach was regarding IT software, and I see in the purchase card data a lot of IT purchases around software. Is that a potential area that you might be concerned about? So if you could just give us an outline, please.
Yeah, so with regards, if I pick up the IT point, within the purchasing card policy, no ICT spend can occur without it going through ICT team. So if anything is picked up, it would be diverted to ICT. So that should not be happening, and that is one of the trigger points of the audit that we undertake quarterly within my team. So so aggregation. So the way that we monitor the spend that goes through the purchasing cards is quarterly. A report is produced on all the spend, and this is categorised into merchant category code, so the type of merchant. It's categorised into supplier. So again, we can see, say we've spent, for example, with Argos, all the spend for Argos for that quarter. And that, I'm saying Argos because that was our highest spending supplier in quarter 3. And and also the nominal code, so how it's accounted for in the accounts. So my team are split into category areas. They will look through that spend, and if anything is outside the policy, so if, for example, they're not supposed, officers aren't supposed to be using purchasing cards for purchasing fuel, that should go through fuel cards. We have had some breaches of that, and that's been investigated, and those it's 2 children's homes that have done that. They're working with the transport team. We're getting them onto the All-Star fuel card contract that we have. So they're picked up, and I suppose it is retrospective spend. You know, we're looking at when the horse has bolted, but ultimately it's about a cultural shift. So the spreadsheet that we're using, it's currently not in our spend analysis system. The ideal would be that it would be, but because we're currently re-procuring a new ERP system, it will be something that we're looking at spend analysis as an overall strategy, and the ideal would be that the purchasing card spend does go into the spend analysis system. But we're doing it on Excel, which is absolutely fine. It does the job. And so it's picking up that aggregation through the way it is categorised. And anything. So, for example, if there's sort of things where we know it's... So through the CPRs, we should be using corporate contracts as before we're going out. So, for example, we've picked up on some train line spend that should be going through Click Travel. So we are tackling it as it arises, but it's sort of a long-term strategy to get people to change the culture of how they're purchasing.
So, yeah, thank you. Faye.
Thank you. I was just going to pick up specifically on the technology, because as Holly says, her team flagged them to the digital and ICT team. And also to mention what we have got in place is a technology governance board. So every quarter the technology governance board meets, and they have a list of all the system contracts, and they review, you know, as they're coming up to, you know, needing to be replaced or, you know, extended, etc. They monitor that, and they kind of liaise with the relevant managers to make sure that they're picking that up and make sure there's no breaches. And as I say, work really closely with Holly's team, really, in terms of, we updated the contract procedure rules to make it clear that any system spend has to be, be approved by the manager of digital and IT. So we've tightened that.
Thank you, Faye. And you mentioned about you do find that there are some issues. You've caught those. In terms of training, we mentioned about training around PCRs. Is that the same training that would cover purchase cards, or do we have additional training for that? How do we address that?
Yeah, so we don't have any specific training delivered on purchasing cards, but when the purchase cards are set up for officers, we have an intranet page, and it has card holder responsibilities and the actual card holder's responsibilities and the approver's responsibilities. They sign up to essentially it's a terms and conditions document. You know, this is what your responsibilities are as a card holder. This is what your responsibilities are as an approver. If they fail to adhere or change, you know, so if fuel continues to be spent on the purchasing card, and if it's for an emergency something, that's fair enough. But if it's a continued breach within the purchasing card policy, we can remove that card, and we would remove that card. But we've not got to that point, because obviously most officers all officers want to comply with policies, and they are working effectively with our transport team. There's been a bit of delay on moving some of them onto fuel cards because we're varying the contract at the moment. So we're sort of sorting that out, but that's quite technical. That probably don't need to be aware of. But.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. And just in terms, you mentioned Argos, which I've obviously seen in the data. And there's a couple of other ones where it's unclear, because they're such large retailers, potentially what they're spending it on. It's not exactly clear. So Argos, Amazon, eBay, for example. How do you drill down into that? Do you require people to have detailed invoices or receipts from those organisations so you can drill down into it? Do you get that data?
That data goes into the P2P team. There's detail put on the line, but they also, as part of the VAT, and I'm not a VAT expert, but they have to upload the receipt. So that I think we do claim that VAT back. So that can be drilled down into. My team do not drill into that data. We don't look at the receipts. It's too onerous. We wouldn't be able to do that from a capacity perspective. But I suppose there could be spot checks done on that.
Sorry, Pete, just one extra question on that. You said there could be spot checks. Does that mean there's no spot checks at the moment? Does not happen in my team, but it may happen in P2P. I would assume that they are looking at those receipts to ensure that the VAT is, that they can claim, they've got a receipt and they can get the VAT.
Sorry, yeah, there's checks to ensure that the VAT receipt has been provided. I suppose what we're not doing is having a look at that VAT receipt and checking what they've purchased, etc. in terms of, but there are checks to ensure that the receipts are.
I think it's important to clarify, though, that the people signing off those credit card spend are senior managers who are responsible for that spend. They will see what that spend is. I know that on occasions I have to sign off spend on cards, and if I don't know what it is, I'll ask. But it will tell me what it is. You know, there's a difference here, isn't there, between, well, it's probably important to clarify for the purpose of the record, that there are differences between better procurement practice and inappropriate spend on cards. And inappropriate spend on card is managed at manager level, and would be spotted at manager level, because they are the ones who are signing off that spend. So they identify what it is. If it's an Amazon spend, you will ask what that is, and your direct line person will tell you what that is, and that's your responsibility as a line manager to ensure that it's an appropriate spend. Obviously, whether or not we can procure things better is a different story, isn't it? And that's something that's looked at more corporately by Holly's team, but individual line managers ensure that spend is appropriate and not for other reasons.
Yes, just to add, Chair, the audit that you referred to is actually ongoing at the moment. As part of that audit, we're sending out questionnaires to a number of cardholders and approvers to check their understanding of the rules. It might be a bit of a learning exercise or a reminder for them. As part of the audit, we're also going to be looking at the sort of detail behind the spend that we've been talking about. And going forward, we're working on a Power BI database that will hopefully be able to use in a more joined up way than we've currently got at the moment, because we've got checks taking off between Holly's procurement team and the P2P team. Maybe we can find a way to sort of do it as one, so it's more comprehensive, more consistent.
Thanks very much, all of you. Sorry, David.
Can I just ask, it's quite easy to lose a receipt. What happens when a receipt gets lost or isn't available?
If I can come in, because effectively sometimes there's telephone orders, so I authorise paid cards. And just to add to the point that Scott was talking about, in terms of responsible officers, as I've just illustrated, even I authorise purchase cards. You click on the system, it's Lloyd's. Effectively, you've got a summary detail. You can look at that if you know what it is. If you don't, you click on further and it tells you underneath what the detail is. And as Scott's saying, if you don't know further from that, you ask your person who's actually bought it in the first instance. So there's a number of layers of providing that information. If they haven't got a receipt, like sometimes the things that people are ordering on my behalf, they're fairly unusual. There isn't a receipt, and therefore we can't recover the VAT. That's it. But you've got the detail online at the point of authorisation, and if there's the ability to recover VAT, it's only through having that receipt to accompany it.
Iris.
On that, or further into that subject, when you buy things online, there's a provision usually to print, isn't there? So that, do you ask that if they bought something on eBay, do you ask that they print the receipt? No, because that is proof of what they've bought and when they bought it.
The system does that. So effectively, it's the data's had baked into the records that come from Lloyd's banking. So you've got the line details and everything, the amount, the VAT, if it's applicable, etc. So it's all there online when you're authorising it. That's the modern way.
Thanks, Iris. Thanks, everybody, for your comments on that. And I didn't want this to be a procurement card audit right now, but thank you very much for your comments. And just to kind of pick up on what Scott and Debbie were saying, I agree it's with the managers, but I'll go down the Ronald Reagan route of trust but verify. So we'll wait for the outcome of the audit. And I like the idea of the spot checks. So I'll read out the recommendations. And Holly, thank you for your comments on it. Recommendations for the breaches and waivers. To note the waivers and the breaches recorded for the period between the 1st of September 2024 and the 28th of February 2025. And to note work undertaken by the strategic procurement team to ensure continued compliance and delivery of corporate procurement services. Is that moved? And agreed? Seconded? And agreed, thank you. Excellent. Item 8, the local code of corporate governance review and the production of the 2024-25 draft annual governance statement, or AGS. As all members have read the report, can I ask Debbie Hogg if she wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Debbie.
It's business as usual. We do this every year. I think what's interesting to note is that what you've got in front of you is some really, really tricky issues that the organisation's dealing with, and we've got them in view, and we've got an action plan to keep them in view and report to you on those matters. So largely what we had in view in 23-24 is also in 24-25. And the additional item, I suppose, on top of those items, and I'm hoping that what you've got in terms of the action plan, there's also a requirement to have a forward look. And I'm just going to get to the right at the back of the report, and I should have picked out the page so that you could. We had it. So just bear with me so I can point to it in the. There's a section where we're saying there's forward-looking items, and this is slightly different. It's a new recommendation. I still can't find it. Here we got it. Thank you. Yes, it's page. I got it just at the same time. Page 74, page 17 of the AGS statement. So this forward look on governance is a new recommendation as part of drafting it, and you'll see within there what we've done to arrive at these new forward looking items is we triangulated our. So colleagues will be aware that we produce the finance and performance report on a quarterly basis. We've triangulated that information and the risks that are contained within that against the items that we've already got within the main body of the AGS in order and we've sort of considered whether they need to be elevated, and that's why you've got those 3 additional items included in there. So I think by doing that exercise we've completed doing that horizon scanning exercise really, and making sure that all the significant matters that the organisation is dealing with as part of their day-to-day business, we've got them in view and they're reported to different forums, whether it be the Overview and Scrutiny Committee as part of the quarterly finance and performance report, or whether it's yourself in terms of the annual governance statement. So it'd be interesting to hear your views as to, you know, whether we think we've got the right things in view, or there's other matters that you consider that we should have had in view. But we think we go over and above in terms of being, I guess, super critical of the significant matters that we need to keep in view and keep the organisation, you know, reporting on and ensuring that those potential risks are either mitigated or the actions are there in order to ensure that that we've got an effective control environment.
Thank you, Debbie. Faye, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say something specifically about the dedicated schools grant item, really, in terms of the updates. I'm just conscious this kind of links to a later report. So I just wanted to highlight, really, in terms of the dedicated schools grant, just how much work has been done over the last year. If we think back to February, when we did the the final for 23-24, there were a lot of actions in there. And what we've done as part of the draft for 24-25 is actually review those actions, and where they've been completed, almost narrate them in the background and just be really clear about what the future actions are. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that, really, in terms of the dedicated schools grant and how we've kind of moved from the 23-24 and the 24-25, including, you know, highlighting what has been completed in terms of during the year, and also reference in terms of the Delivering Better Value programme, and we continue to spend the grant, and we're carrying forward some money to then continue those dedicated activities in terms of how we're managing that deficit. A significant deficit remains, and we'll kind of come on to that later in the agenda. But as it highlighted in the report, it is a national issue. You know, it's expected to reach 8.2 billion by 26-27. And if no action was taken, we'd be looking at a 82.5 million overspend for Newton's work that we did. So just highlighting all the work that's been undertaken, and also we're currently undertaking outturns, so we're currently closing down the accounts for 24-25. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there has been a positive swing from Q3 to the outturn as well, which is really positive in terms of the dedicated schools grant. So we'll be reporting more on that as part of the outturn.
Thank you, Faye. Do any members have any questions? Okay, just me, I think, then. So I was a bit confused, and you can probably just explain this to me, why there's not more about the costs for the airport in there. Is there a particular reason for that, or?
Because this is about effectively internal control risks, and based on the report we received as part of the accounts, we've got a strong control environment in terms of the managing. Well, you're referencing, because obviously there's a lot of other risks, but actually controlling the arrangements we have in 24-25, they were effective and sound. So that's, whilst it's part of the future look, because we need to be ever vigilant, in our opinion, the arrangements we had for the procurement controls around the resources we had in 24-25, and the reporting arrangements, which were extensive to various committees, in our opinion, they're sound and strong and still hold true.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. I mean, I was just wondering, with it being so new, whether or not there'd been a reflection of what that control environment looks like. So it sounds as if that was covered and that's effective.
I'd probably say it's dynamic, because we're at a stage where all things haven't been settled really in terms of the operational arrangements going forward for the airport. So as we stand, the sound in terms of what we've got, in terms of we're incurring expenditure within the council. We've got the appropriate mechanisms. We just had a bit of a conversation really about procurement cards, but that gives you a bit of an understanding and how we control expenditure per se. And you know, in terms of the budget monitoring arrangements we've got. So that's why I referenced it as business as usual, because how we're dealing with the reopening process for the airport is within our current control environment, which we consider to be sound and effective.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. Dynamic, entrepreneurial and agile are words I don't normally like to hear, but normally means a lack of control. Just in terms of the forward-looking stuff, you mentioned before when Holly was here, or somebody mentioned, about a future ERP system. Is that not likely to be an area where we might need some additional controls? ERP systems are famous for overrunning and taking councils down. Is that something we should be considering?
Yeah, it's not something we felt needed to be in the annual governance statement at this time. We're currently undertaking a procurement for the ERP system, and we'll be having, you know, as with the AGS, we continue to review and refine, and we, you know, every quarter we review, does it, you know, has it got the right things in it, etc. But we expect we haven't got any concerns from a, you know, a control and governance perspective to incorporate.
And I'd probably just come back in terms of we are exceptionally good at implementing IT systems. So I think I know I'm slightly being smug, and you know what they say about the next thing comes after being smug.
You really set yourself up there, Debbie.
No, I'm not, because you've got to back yourself. So the experience we have, the team we've got, you know, we've got we are alive to risks, and we mobilise resources, and we are diligent in terms of the application of those resources in terms of achieving outcomes. If you look at I think we've talked previously about the implementation of the adults and children's systems. That took 5 years, hard slog, but it's been transformational in terms of that for their business. But we got there, and I guess it's on the back of that. You know, there's if Dulcie was here, she would talk about the fact that incrementally we're changing over the council's telephony system, and then we'll be changing the platform for the customer relations management system. We're good at doing this. We've got staff, and we've got a good team in terms of the IT and the client function, and we know we need to divert resources onto it and people. It might not be a flash in the pan, you know, but our approach in Doncaster is slow, steady, and delivery. I think it says it on the outside of the wall, be steadfast.
Wow, thank you, Debbie. And I hope that all turns out to be correct. So let's. I don't know if any of us are going to be here over the next few years, but I hope to either be sat here listening to how great our ERP implementation, or watching it online. But I can tell you now, if it's not very good, I'll be sat in the gallery up there. If I'm not sat here.
Rotten fruit. Yeah, I mean, Faye's just said, Stephen, who leads it, would take personal pride in, you know, moving heaven and earth to achieve things. You know, he's absolutely brilliant. and you know, it's through the dedication of staff and the expertise that they bring. That's how we can have that level of confidence.
Thank you very much. Vote Debbie Hogg. I think that was very good. No, it was a good one. Right, you took me by surprise there, Debbie. Okay, I think we'll read out the recommendation. So the recommendation is that the Chair and members of the Audit Committee are asked to review and endorse the updated Local Code of Corporate Governance document and outline of the draft AGS, or the Annual Governance Statement, prior to being published for consultation as part of the draft 2024-25 City of Doncaster Council accounts. Is that moved? And seconded? Oh, agreed. Lovely. I think that's the strongest statement ever. Nobody's ever said to me how great an IT project is going to be. So, Praminda, I hope you were listening. Yeah. I'll be coming up for your review. Wow. Okay, so item 9, Audit Committee Annual Report 2024-25. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention, or has anything to add since the report was drafted? Peter.
Yes, Chair. I'll just say a few words of introduction, then hand it over to yourself, as it is the committee's own report. So, the report's largely a factual report summarising the work of the Audit Committee over the last year, showing how the committee has discharged its terms of reference. There's also reference to the effectiveness review, which we conducted last month, and that came up with a couple of action points about raising awareness and training once we've got the election outcomes over. Apart from that, Chair, I'm happy to hand it over for yourself to lead on.
Yeah, thanks very much. Do any members have any questions? David?
Yeah, I was surprised to read in there about the bereavement services, the arrangements with one of the funeral director sorry, apologies. Apparently it's the next one, so.
Yeah, is that? It's okay, David. I made the same mistake the other day as well. I was asking questions on the wrong one. So I don't think... The only comment I had, Peter, and I think I'm in the right report, is the self-assessments. That's in this one, isn't it? Yeah, okay. I know we do self-assessments for schools. Is that something we could consider rolling out to other departments to look at their controls? That's the next one.
Ding ding, round 2.
Got a feeling he wants to go home.
I think I'll read the recommendation. Right, okay. Audit Committee is asked to make a comment and consider approval of the attached Audit Committee annual report. Is that moved?
Yes.
Seconded?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. Annual. Shall we do the annual report of the Head of Internal Audit? Is that right? Have we got this right way around now? As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring any specific issues to members' attention, or has anything to add since the report was drafted? I think we might have some questions.
Yes, I've got one as well.
Yes, Chair, and I think I know the lines of questioning that I'm going to be getting. So, this is my annual report, Chair. When I was writing it, felt very similar to the ones that I've written now for the last 3 years. I'm very happy to be able to give a positive opinion without limitation over the Council's risk governance and control arrangements. I've been assessing this as the year progressed and hope to be able to do this. It's very important assurance to the committee after this last year and previous years, and credit to the culture and tone from the top in being a well-managed and governed organisation. I've self-assessed our team as being compliant with the outgoing standards, and I'm confident in being able to meet the new standards as the year progresses. Our work didn't identify any areas to be covered as part of the Council's annual governance statement, and there was only one area highlighted where a limited assurance opinion was given. There's a similar number of outstanding management actions at the year end, which is consistent with the numbers reported throughout the year. and previous year-end figures. My annual opinion and how I arrived at it is set out in quite some detail at section 8, and I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
David, do you have a question by any chance?
Thank you, Chair. Item 5.6, the issue about arrangements for billing and funeral directors, and this has led to an increase or a large bill where somebody hasn't paid. Has this been picked up in previous occasions, or is this new? Because I was really surprised to see this in here. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think this is a new item that arose as a result of carrying out the audit, and it's been quickly rectified. As you'll note that we've now had all the actions implemented, and we've got the payment arrangements in place against that particular debt.
Yes, thank you. I understand what it said, but I was just really surprised to see that this had actually built up to become in here. So, and another item is 6.5, the teachers' pensions data matching. I was of the opinion that when somebody reports a death, that all departments are contacted. And I know pensions is out of the organisation, but surely that's one of those that needs to be contacted, and this shouldn't therefore happen.
Yes, you're correct. There is a process for reporting only once. However, it is, as you correctly point out, this is a different organisation that deal with the teachers' pensions. So our proactive checks do identify these overpayments more quickly than if it went through the normal route. So it is a very useful actual action that we take, and we haven't found a way of being able to get it more joined up to avoid it happening in the first place.
Thank you, David. Peter, just a question from me just regarding your data analytics work. What is the future for us as internal audit to do more data analytics? And also, are you considering doing continuous auditing?
Yes, Chair, that's exactly the route that I want the team to be able to go down. We have progressed it in the last few years. I'd have liked to have been able to progress it further. We've struggled to be able to recruit the necessary sort of data-skilled people. We have had somebody go through the data technician apprenticeship, so that's improved our skills in the area. And the realignment that I put through within the team did free up our most skilled data person. So that will give her more capacity to be able to develop our data work going forward. We have got a draft data strategy for the internal audit team in place at the moment. We're making sure that that aligns up with the council's data strategy. But as part of our own data strategy, we are looking to develop the continuous work, and I think there is some reference to that along the payroll. That's it, the draft payroll audit tool. So there's a number of areas where we've got stuff under development.
Thanks, Peter. And just a last question, just on the self-assessments. So we've done the control self-assessments for schools. Is that something we could look at, maybe rolling out more widely and understanding the controls in each directorate?
Yes, I had to think about this, Chair, and I went back to the lead auditor who's on the purchase card piece of work. And what we're actually doing is an exercise along those lines. I mentioned earlier that we're sending out these questionnaires to people. So we're going to be using that. I think we're going to be using Microsoft Forms, because those then help us collate the results together so we can easily produce statistics and so on. So that's one that we're definitely going to be sort of applying at the moment, and then we'll have a look as part of the planning process against other audits during the year and see if we can apply that in other areas.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear it. I'm a great believer in continuous self-assessments and also management self-identified issues, which I think we've mentioned some years ago. Debbie?
Not wanting to open up the AGS again, but part of the mechanism we use, there's a little diagram in the report itself that talked about how we do bottom up, and there's a quadrant of things that we ask every service to examine. This year we found we got a little bit of a sea of green in that self-assessment we've talked about. Well, I've just outlined, because we asked people to look at all these different dimensions. So I've just wanted you to be aware that we do an annual, we ask each service manager to do that self-assessment around lots and lots of different things, actually. But it also felt a bit complacent. You know, it couldn't possibly be a sea of green. And we had a, can you remember me talking about the Witches' Coven? So when we had our meeting, it was like, it can't be like this. So we're going to be doing dip sampling, you know, in some mechanism. So I'm hoping that might trigger a further conversation, because I think Pete and Sinette and Hayley will be doing that exercise. But not just the purchase card, but that wider governance piece, we're going to be doing more dip sampling to make sure that you know, people are sort of kept on the toes, basically. And the opposite, what we did talk about, is that rather than doing the annual survey, we might actually just do dip sampling and then everybody, it's a bit like mystery shopper, nobody knows where they're going to, where we're going to be looking at as part of that annual governance statement assurance piece. So the jury's out on that latter piece, but the dip sampling we're defo doing.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, trust but verify. Yeah, yeah, very much so. Excellent. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Harris.
Sit in the queue, that's all right. Item 7.2 about the somebody who was getting refunds for things that weren't ever paid. Don't we, when we want to issue a refund, don't we check that they have, you know, not personally, I mean on the system, doesn't it check that the expenditure was made in the first place?
Yeah, so for this particular item, it was the member of staff that had put the payment falsely through, and it was the management checks by the service manager that did identify that we hadn't actually provided that service. So yes, you're right, in normal circumstances that is the control, and the service manager was able to establish that the service hadn't been provided. So the management check did work in that circumstance to identify this fraud.
It was just a bit worrying that it was picked up after the refund had been made, so that, you know, it didn't stop it in its process, but you are, it says, being able to reclaim it, which is good, but, you know, it would be best if it didn't happen in the first place. Thank you.
Yeah, we did a very comprehensive piece of work once we established what had happened here, and this was very much an isolated incident within the whole process.
Any further questions? Oh, sorry, Debbie.
I think it's just worth noting that we're a £1 billion organisation, 4,000 staff. There's going to be an inevitability that if somebody's minded, they will find a way. But this perfectly illustrates, even of small value, is we, again, coming back to the assurance around control framework, that it's subsequently picked up and worked through, and further internal controls are brought about. But I just think we're never going to eradicate everything. It's just impossible, given this sort of the breadth of. The opposite will be, you could eradicate it, it'd just be totally cost ineffective to have everybody ensuring that everything was double checked. So it's finding that sweet spot really between enabling staff to undertake their roles and then having sufficient management oversight in terms of activities.
It's just, I mean, I know in terms of our budget, it's beans, but having seen it escalate and ended up being the dog's body for the fraud squad at one company, you know, you realise these things, they grow like topsy, and you know, so you've nipped it in the bud, so that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll read out the recommendation. The Audit Committee is asked to note the internal audit report for 2024-25, including confirmation that the Council's governance, risk management and control arrangements were adequate and operated effectively during the year. To note the Head of Internal Audit's self-assessment that the service is compliant with the public sector internal audit standards, maintaining the outcome from the external quality assessment carried out during the 2021-22 year, which confirmed the highest level of conformance with the relevant public sector internal audit standards. Is that moved? And seconded? All agreed. Thank you. Okay, item 11, the Counter-Fraud Activity Report. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring to attention any issues to members' attention that's been added to the report since it was drafted? Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick summary. This is the report where we horizon scan for new fraud risks. We undertake an assessment of the fraud risk for the Council, produce an assurance map, mapping out mitigations, and it results in a counter-fraud plan for the year. And this sits within the main audit plan, which is the next agenda item. What you may note in the report, in the actual plan, the counter-fraud plan itself, is that it has categorisations along the lines of what Debbie's just been mentioning about we put arrangements in place to govern against fraud. We have arrangements to prevent fraud. We can't always prevent it, but we do have arrangements in place then to detect fraud, and we've been talking particularly about that around purchase cards as well earlier on today. So there's many tiers of control that we have in place around our fraud arrangements. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Just one question from me, Pete, and I know we've discussed this before, but authorised push payment fraud is the biggest fraud in the UK at the moment. And I know on the heat map here, we've got cyber fraud, which is right on the far right-hand side, and then we've got bank mandate fraud sitting in the green area. How have we considered the risk of authorised push payment fraud in all its various different guises of how it's committed? Because it's a complicated area.
I'll have to come back to the committee on that one, Chair, as the manager who's compiled this report isn't available at the moment, so I'll update through with the action log and going forward, if that's okay. Sure, it will have been considered.
Yes, I'm sure it has.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, if you're going back to the person involved, just to understand how we're looking at our own bank accounts and our own use of those payments. So, yeah, if we could look at that. Thank you.
Just really wanted to make a comment, which on 2.6, where it's about cryptocurrency and that we don't use it, neither does St Ledger, and I think it's good and it should remain that way. I mean, I frankly don't understand it, but it just seems to me open to misuse.
Okay. Faye, was there anything you wanted to add as 151? No? Good. Okay, in that case, I'll read out the recommendation. So the recommendation is the Audit Committee is asked to support and approve the counter-fraud plan and the assurance map, which maps all the proposed activity to fraud risks. Is that moved and seconded? Moved, seconded? Oh, agreed, thank you. And that's noted. Okay, item 12, internal audit plan. As all members have read the report, can I ask Peter Jackson, Head of Internal Audit, if he wishes to bring to attention any issues that have been added to the report since it was drafted? Thank you.
Just a very quick summarisation of where we are, Chair. So we've done extensive work, several members of the team over the last few weeks, consultation across all areas of the council. We've produced our plan. It's split into 3 areas of planned work, advice and consultancy, and the counter-fraud plan that we just covered a few minutes ago. It's subsequently been to ELT since the report was drafted, and it's now awaiting your committee's approval. Hopefully the plan is, as ever, very flexible, and I believe it contains sufficient work for me to be able to give an annual opinion next year. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
More of a bit of a question from me, Pete. This is a very ambitious audit plan, in my opinion. It's quite comprehensive. But with your realignment exercise, do you think you've got sufficient skills and capacity within the team to deliver this?
Yes, I think it is ambitious. I've gone back and double-checked my calculations when a couple of people have made comments along the lines of it looks a heck of a piece of work to be delivered. And it stacks out. What I think I can probably guarantee is, though, that the plan of work that we do deliver during the next year will be altered to pick up any new and emerging pieces of work. But that will still be as a priority over other pieces of work that are in the existing plan. We've talked about our additional resources to improve our data-driven work. The realignment put an additional management post in, so that's given us additional management capacity and the ability to deal with more complex work. That's something that we find coming through as an ongoing trend. We have put additional capacity into the team at the lower level. I've talked about recruitment difficulties there, so we've got to grow our own principal there. We've talked about as appointing the apprentice, and we've successfully done that. She's progressing well with her studies. And we've also talked about in the past, the resources to be able to deliver on the counter-fraud side. And we have had 2 people go through the accredited counter-fraud specialist training. They're just finishing off the field work, but they sat their exams last month and passed them with flying colours. So that does give us more additional capacity in the team on that side of things. So I think in all, it's been quite a successful year for the team in terms of developing them going forward. And there is still a lot of room for development going forward over this next and future years as well, Chair.
Can I just ask why the capacity in hours is going down when all this work, extra work's coming forward? Or 5, the audit resources. It's going down from 18,700 to 18,000.
Yes, last year we had on a secondment someone from the financial systems development team, and that secondment came to an end, so there's a slight drop then in the capacity available to the team. Yeah, and that was to put extra capacity into the data-driven work, but that secondment had to come to an end, so we're developing internally instead. So in broad terms, it's very similar, but that accounts for that, largely accounts for that drop in resource.
More of a comment than a question, or there might be even a question. I look at Appendix B, advice and consultancy work, and I've got to agree with the chair on this. You've got quite a hell of a lot of a workload. But I've always had a particular thing about councillors online. Don't like it. Never have liked it. I use it, but that's the reason why I don't like it, because it doesn't answer the questions that I ask. And the tragedy is that in terms of involvement, I won't be around. This is my last meeting. I stand down this time round. But if there is a question to it, will councillors be involved in this in terms of being surveyed about the usefulness of councillors online, etc.?
I haven't decided yet exactly how to undertake this piece of work. What I was going to do was to use my contacts with the IT audit supplier to establish if we've got better arrangements that they're aware of in different authorities. That was going to be my initial step, and then see if we can take it on from there. But I'll bear that in mind when I come to pick that piece of work up.
Yeah, well, no, that's useful. But it's the person that's involved, which is the councillors. They've got to be satisfied that they're getting... you can't always ask a question and get the answer you want back, which is my maxim, unfortunately. I live in a different world to most people. But it's important, because the way that I finally got round it was to direct my question to the officer and included the councillors online, so they've got a copy of it. And that's the way I got round it, because there's always follow-on questions, and you're batting between yourself, and no disrespect to them, but to, I call them receptionists, whomever they are, and then they bat it on back to the officer or a different officer. You don't know. Gone are the days when we can talk one-to-one like we're doing here, for example, and you can do follow-up queries about the concerns that you may have.
Yeah, I'm conscious of the sort of scenarios that you're presenting here, Councillor.
Okay, any further questions? No, I'll read out the recommendation. So the recommendation, the Audit Committee is asked to support the principles and strategy underpinning the 2025-26 Internal Audit Plan set out in Section 1, expanded upon in Section 7 of the Internal Audit Report, and approve the plan as set out in Appendices A, B and C. Is that moved? Seconded? And all noted, thank you. We move on to item 13, the External Auditor Audit Plan. Can I ask Perminda? Actually, welcome, Georgia. You got good, large shoes to fill from Gareth. He served as well, and we wish Gareth all the best in his new endeavours. But very welcome to you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Perminda, if you can, you're from Grant Thornton, if you can bring any specific issues to members' attention, or has anything changed since the report was drafted, if you'd like to present it, Perminda.
Thank you, Chair. You have the audit plan for 24-25 in front of you, and in developing the audit plan for the year, we take on board, obviously, our cumulative audit knowledge from the prior year and earlier than that, as well as local and national developments. Some of the developments we've set out on page 7 of our pack, or page 173 of the combined pack, around the outturn position for the authority, which at the moment looks like it would be a 1.2 million deficit, although officers are trying to work to eliminate that where possible. And you've set a balanced budget for 25-26 with a savings requirement of 4 million for the particular year. Doncaster Sheffield Airport we reported on in our auditor's annual report for 23-24, and that's one area that we'll be picking up and reviewing again as part of our planned work for 24-25, as is the dedicated schools grant, which has already been mentioned, and Faye commented on that earlier. A couple of new things that impact for this year is the implementation of IFRS 16, which applies to all local authorities from 24-25, and that relates to leases. So we'll be looking at the action the council has taken to implement the changes required by that requirement. And also there's enhanced audit procedures around group financial statements relating to St Ledger Home. So we'll be picking up those particular areas as well. If you turn to page 13 of the pack, or slide pack 179, I think on that page it sort of summarises the key areas that will be undertaken as part of our planned programme of work. The significant risks that we've identified relate to the management override of controls. As you'll recall, this is an area that all auditors need to consider each year and is one area that we can't rebut. And then the other two areas relate to the valuation of the pension fund net balance. Obviously, that is a big item of balance on your balance sheet, as is the closing valuation of land and buildings and council dwellings. So given the big numbers involved, those are particular areas that we will focus on as part of our work. On value for money, we've identified two potential significant risk areas to review. One's around the dedicated schools grant, and that should be no surprise. It was something that we looked at last year. And secondly, around governance, the issues relating to the council's proposed plans to reopen and operate Doncaster Sheffield Airport. Audit logistics, we've been undertaking our interim planning work earlier in the year, and that's continually ongoing at the moment, and we hope to conclude as much of that as possible by the end of April, after which you probably know we then get involved in auditing within the NHS and then break off for a while. And I think the other couple of things I just want to draw to your attention is on slide 25, materiality. Materiality for the group has been determined to be just over £12 million. But of course we will report any items above £602,000, which is trivial, as part of our audit findings report to members when that is published. We've also identified a lower level of materiality for senior officer remuneration, given the sensitivity of the disclosures, which is £25,000 as set out on that slide. There are no independence or ethical issues that we want to bring to your attention, and our fees are set out on page 38 or 204 of the pack. They are, of course, as you know, determined by public sector audit appointments, and there are two items in there relating to additional fees relating to the valuation and increased audit requirements for ISA 315 around assessing the risks of material misstatement. There are no other matters I think I want to bring to committee's attention, but I'll pause there and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Parminder. I just got a couple of questions. So just in terms of, you've raised some really big areas for us around value for money, the DSG, and obviously the governance arrangements for the airport as well. Obviously there's some time before, in order to kind of, these are changing events over the next few months. Are we seeking to monitor these, or how would we monitor these over the next few months?
Thank you, Chair. So we have been meeting regularly with senior management around developments on the airport and other developments in the authority. We meet generally on a quarterly basis, but if other developments happen, we're normally informed about those, so we do meet with appropriate officers. The airport obviously is an ongoing process, and we will continue to monitor that. Our audit work for 24-25 relates to the period up to the end of the financial year, and that's what we will be reporting on. However, we will continue to remain in touch with officers with developments and consider those as they arise.
Okay, and you heard earlier that we're implementing an ERP system. Obviously some councils struggle to implement them because they're not quite as good as we are, but when would be a good point for you to interact with that change management? So it's going to be a large programme. I'm assuming there'll be a number of milestones. from an external auditor point of view, when would be a good time for you to interact with that to get comfort over the arrangements?
So we have specialised IT auditors that actually undertake work at the council looking at your key systems each year. When we become aware that you have a new system coming into play, we do let them know, so they will start talking to you before the system actually becomes operational, to consider A, what work internal audit might be undertaking, any levels of parallel running, and also the assurance that you yourselves are getting, and then we will consider the impact on the audit itself and the extent of our work. So as soon as we become aware, we will speak to the IT team at the council and consider what work we may be involved in.
I'm sure Debbie would be happy to share their good practice with you as they go forward. Let other councils know. But yeah, if you could interact, I think we'd all be keen as the audit committee here to make sure that we get early interaction with that, to make sure that we can demonstrate our good practice. Thank you. Okay, in that case, I'll read out the recommendation if there's no further questions. No? Okay, thank you, Perminda. So the recommendation is to, I forgot now. Is it just to note it, Sarah? It's just to note it, yeah. Okay, is that moved? Seconded, thank you. All agreed? Excellent, okay. In that case, Perminda, we'll just move on to item 14 and item 15. Can we do those together, Sarah? Is that right? Essentially, they're both for noting anyway. So item 14 is the audit findings for Doncaster Council for the year ending 31st of March 2024, and the auditor's annual report ending the 31st of March 2024. Perminda, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, these reports you've already considered at the February meeting already. So that was the audit findings report, setting out our findings from the audit of accounts for 23-24, and the auditor's annual report. They were reissued after we'd issued our audit opinion to say that the audit opinion has been issued. So they are final copies for noting, but you have already considered their content.
Okay, any particular questions? No, in that case, the recommendation is for those to be noted. Is that moved? Seconded? Agreed. Thank you. Excellent. So, thank you very much, everybody. So, very much like the last 3 years that we've sat here and done these. So, thank you very much, Perminda. And it's been an overall positive meeting, and we've learnt quite a lot. We've learnt that we ought to set up our own consultancy doing IT work, by the sounds of it. But as John said earlier, this is his last audit committee, and whilst the other of us may return, who knows, John won't be. So, and you've been on audit committee before, haven't you?
Yes. Can I say it's? I wouldn't say it's been enjoyable. That's not the right word. No, it's been illuminating. That I will say. It certainly has. But what I did like is that, regardless of party, etc., we've worked as a team, and I felt, as a member of Audit, we've worked as a team with the officers. There's never been anything too serious. You've gone away, you might have grumbled, but you've brought an answer back, whether we like that or not. The problem was, as an issue that was raised, we've resolved it between ourselves. So it's been great. In a way, I'm sorry to be going, but geography forces me. For those of you that don't know, I live in Sheffield now, and I don't work here. I have no property here. I don't have a business here either, but that's by the by. So I'm for a high jump. But I've enjoyed it. I will say that. I have enjoyed it. Thank you, Chair.
This year was my return to Audit after a gap of several years. Surprisingly, I realised when we did the subcommittee a little while ago that it was when I was on it before and it was the same subject. But just in case I don't come back, I have enjoyed working by being back on audit, and should I be re-elected, then I'll put my name forward for it and see who they choose. But thank you.
Chair, thank you. I just want to thank everybody for welcoming me back onto the committee. I also want to thank officers for all of the work that they do, because without them we wouldn't be in this situation we're in, a balanced budget, and that is so important for all of Doncaster, that we get the right services for the right people at the right time. And thanks also to the auditors for all of their work as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And Austin's not here, unfortunately, but I wish him all the best in his recovery. And as John said, this audit committee is not political, and Austin made that very clear from day one, nearly 4 years ago now. It seems like yesterday. And I think we've worked very effectively, both between us and with you. So thank you very much. Debbie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to, thank you. In terms of the spirit of, you know, how the committee works, I think having worked in lots of other authorities, it is an effective relationship we operate. I think it does come back to the fact that we have got a very sound organisation, because and from strength it means that you can build on that. So yeah, I think we're in a good place, and therefore, but the way that the committee operates, just like to thank everybody for participating in that, because that's so really important, and without that we won't have a committee. So thank you. And just in terms of, so Scott was jabbering me while we were doing other business, because if you would like to see the P2P, the Lloyd's banking system and the purchase card system, he's got it open. So if you would like to spend a little bit of time looking at his authorising transactions, he's just come back into the meeting, so you can see it in real time.
So we get a bit of entertainment before we finish today. It's my kind. My kind of entertainment. Well, thank you very much. So that does conclude today's business and the business for the 2024-25 municipal year. Thank you very much, everybody, for their attendance. Thank you for everybody sat on the front there, Peter, Faye, Debbie. Thank you, Perminda and Georgia, for coming along. Thank you, Scott and Holly, for earlier on. It has been an enjoyable 4 years. I've enjoyed being on this audit committee, and I hope whoever comes after us takes note that we left it in pretty good standing. Thanks very much. Oh, I do apologise, and to Amber. You know, they do such a good job, and without their scripts and organisation. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Amber. Thanks, everybody. Bye.